So let's say that you're voting in an election to decide who becomes your representative. This person will help decide the laws in your country and represent your interests in the country's parliament or legislature, the main place where laws are made in the country. You've got a couple of options of who to vote for, with each candidate belonging to a larger national political party. A political party is an organisation of people with a shared set of beliefs and policies that tries to get as many of its members elected as possible in order to enact these policies. So, let's skip to the day after the election. All of the votes have been tallied, and the party that you voted for have won 20% of the national vote. So, 20% of the seats or the representatives in the legislature are from that party, right? No, it's 5%. That seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? Proportional representation could be the alternative to this system. Today, we're going to try to explain it and ask whether it might be a better way to vote. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to my channel so that I can keep making interesting content like this. Proportional representation, or PR, is a type of voting system whereby the percentage of votes a party gets equals the percentage of seats or representatives they end up having in the legislature. So, under proportional representation, if a party gets 30% of the vote, they get 30% of the seats. Simple. There are a couple of different systems for achieving this proportionality, as we might call it, like Single Transferable Vote, which is the system used in Ireland, or a mixed member system used in Germany. We won't go into depth with these different systems in this video. The important point to remember is that the outcome of these systems is the same. The percentage of votes a party gets equals the percentage of seats they get. This isn't how it works in countries like the USA or the UK. In the US and the UK, we have first past the post. It's good to look at first past the post for contrast, because it's basically the opposite of proportional representation. In first past the post, you vote for somebody to represent you in your specific district. This district or constituency is almost always smaller than the area used in a proportional system. This is because in a proportional system, there needs to be a bigger area so that more seats can be shared out. In first past the post, you're voting for one candidate to represent you in this small district. The candidate who receives the most votes in the election wins. So, not 2/3 of the votes, not a majority of the votes, but the most votes. More than other candidates. More than any other candidate. Here's an example. Let's say there are 5 candidates, all wanting to be elected. Candidate 1 gets 24% of the vote, and candidates 2, 3, 4, and 5 get 19% each. I get that this is probably an extreme example, but you'd be surprised at how often these kind of results can happen. Just look at the South West Norfolk constituency in the UK and how it voted in the last election in 2024. Returning to our example, under first past the post, candidate 1 would win and become the representative. So those votes for other candidates, or 76% of voters in this case, would disappear. That's why in some elections, certain parties can get millions of votes, but barely any seats. In PR, these wasted votes would count. They're tallied nationally or regionally, and seats are shared out proportionally. So, let's say that the previous example happened under a proportional system. As I said earlier, this constituency would have to be much bigger. Let's say it's 5 times bigger, so there are 5 more seats up. There are 5 seats in total up for grabs. In our example, because each candidate has got about a fifth of the vote, each candidate would be elected, reflecting their percentage of the vote. So we see here the main advantage of PR. Parties get seats that match their support. This means that smaller parties get a say and fewer votes go to waste. Because your vote always counts, people are more likely to vote. More people involved in the democratic process, that's got to be better, right? PR almost always leads to coalition governments, which is where different parties work together. This is because under PR, it tends to be difficult for one party to get more than 50% of the seats in the legislature and thus govern on their own. These coalitions mean less fighting and more teamwork. But hang on, coalitions mean compromise. This is good for balancing out different interests in society, but bad for getting laws passed quickly. Proportional systems are often paralysed by balancing these different parties' interests and making the coalitions work. This leads to situations like we had in Germany at the last election, where it took months for a government to be formed. Coalitions can also break apart, leading to further paralysis through more elections. This leads to ever more uncertainty and overall slow lawmaking. Similarly, in proportional systems, Voters can't rely on the parties that they vote for sticking to their promises. Although politicians elected under virtually any system break their promises, in a proportional system, parties have to be at least willing from the outset to break their promises in order to form a coalition. Proportional systems, by their very nature, give the people what they want, sometimes meaning extremist parties win seats. Furthermore, as I mentioned earlier, in proportional systems, you wouldn't have your local representative. You would have a bunch of representatives, usually from different parties, representing a larger district. This might make them less independent minded because they could just palm off your concerns to another representative more likely to agree with you who's also in the region. It might also make them less focused on the specifics issues going on in their area compared to a single representative under first past the post representing a tiny area on their own. So where do you stand? If you care about every vote counting the same, if you feel like your voice gets lost if somebody else wins, you might find PR appealing. But if you prefer strong governments and local representatives, you might like first past the post. This isn't just a nerdy debate about numbers, it's about who gets power and how we share it. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know if you think I should make a similar video explaining first past the post. Don't forget to subscribe, and please click the bell icon to get notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you.